The conference room felt ice cold as I stood there, laser pointer trembling in my hand. 20 minutes into my presentation on the Morrison case strategy, Bradley Cross cut me off with a dismissive wave. "Victoria," he said, leaning back in his leather chair with that smirk I'd grown to hate. "You're smart, I'll give you that. But let's be honest here." He picked up my carefully prepared memo and held it like it was trash. "You don't have what it takes to run your own firm. You're not leadership material." The room erupted in chuckles from the other partners. All men, all Bradley's golf buddies. My cheeks burned as I stood frozen, still holding that stupid laser pointer. "You're a great support player," Bradley continued, his voice dripping with false kindness. "But rainmaking? Client development? That's a different skill set entirely." I forced myself to nod politely, swallowing the words that wanted to pour out. Inside, something shattered. Not my confidence. That had been chipped away for months. This time, it was my willingness to stay silent. As the meeting ended and everyone filed out, laughing about weekend plans, I remained standing there. One thought echoed in my mind. Did he really just humiliate me in front of everyone? My name is Victoria Hayes, and I graduated top of my class from Columbia Law School. For 7 years, I'd poured my life into Cross & Associates. 80-hour weeks were normal. Missing family dinners was expected. I told myself it would all pay off when I made partner. I wasn't just another associate. I was the one who built winning strategies for impossible cases. I landed the Henderson account, worth $3 million in billings. I trained every junior who walked through our doors. I wrote the briefs that won us national recognition. But Bradley Cross's name appeared on everything. My case strategies became Cross's brilliant approach. My client relationships were developed under Cross's guidance. My innovations were presented as firm initiatives. 2 years ago, I was promised consideration for the next partner round. Then I was told to wait another year. Then another. Meanwhile, Bradley hired his college roommate's son straight into a senior associate position, a guy who couldn't tell a tort from a contract. I watched my name disappear from presentations. My office got moved to a smaller space. My parking spot was reassigned to someone more senior. 7 years of dedication, and I was still being treated like an intern who should be grateful for the opportunity. The erasure happened slowly, like watching paint fade in sunlight. First, my hours started getting credited to junior associates. I'd work weekends on case research, only to see someone else's name on the final brief. Partner meetings happened without me, even for cases I was leading. "We didn't want to overwhelm you," Bradley would say when I asked why I wasn't included. "You've got enough on your plate." My requests for feedback went unanswered. My suggestions in meetings were ignored, then repeated by someone else 10 minutes later to enthusiastic agreement. It was like I was becoming invisible. The Henderson client, the one I'd spent months courting, was quietly reassigned to a junior partner. "Fresh perspective," Bradley explained. "You understand." I understood perfectly. I was being pushed out systematically, and everyone was pretending it wasn't happening. The final straw came when I saw my name removed from a case study presentation we were giving to potential clients. 3 months of my work, dozens of late nights perfecting the strategy, and suddenly it was developed by the Cross & Associates team. When I confronted Bradley about it, he just smiled. "Team effort, Victoria. No one person can take credit for success here. But somehow, one person could take credit for everything." I'll never forget the moment I knew I was done. I was walking past Bradley's corner office when I heard him talking to another partner. The door was slightly open, and his voice carried clearly into the hallway. "Victoria's great support material," he was saying. "Excellent researcher, good with details, but she's not leadership material. Not a rainmaker. She doesn't have that killer instinct you need to bring in the big clients." Support material? Like I was office equipment. I stood there frozen, listening to them discuss my career like I was some piece of furniture they were trying to figure out where to place. 7 years of my life reduced to good with details. That night, I went home to my tiny apartment and opened my laptop. I created a new document and titled it Hayes Legal Group Business Plan. For the first time in months, I felt something other than frustration. I felt possibility. I wasn't going to beg for respect anymore. I wasn't going to wait for Bradley Cross to decide I was worthy of partnership. I was going to build something where my work would speak for itself, where I would never have to ask permission to succeed. As I started typing, one thought kept running through my mind. He has no idea what he just unleashed. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing had changed. Power suit, confident stride, polished smile. I attended meetings, took notes, nodded at appropriate moments. Everyone saw the same Victoria they expected to see, but everything was different now. During lunch breaks, I researched business licenses and LLC formations. After work, I studied market analysis reports and competitor research. I bookmarked office listings and saved articles about successful law firm launches. I smiled through Bradley's condescending comments. I thanked him politely when he helped by explaining basic legal concepts I'd mastered years ago. I acted grateful when he included me in meetings that should have been mine to run. Behind the scenes, I was building an escape route. I opened a separate bank account under my maiden name. I started networking with former classmates who'd gone to different firms. I reached out to legal recruiters, not to find a new job, but to understand the market. Every insult, every dismissive comment, every time my work was credited to someone else, I filed it away as fuel. Bradley thought he was keeping me in my place. Really, he was giving me the motivation to leave it entirely. The hardest part wasn't planning to leave. It was pretending I still wanted to stay. I became obsessed with documentation. Every email, every meeting summary, every piece of work that got reassigned, I saved it all to an encrypted drive at home. When Bradley claimed credit for my strategy on the Patterson case, I had the original drafts with timestamps. When he told clients about his innovative approach to corporate restructuring, I had emails showing I'd developed the entire framework. I wasn't planning to use this information maliciously. I just wanted protection. If things got ugly when I left, if Bradley tried to claim I'd stolen clients or trade secrets, I'd have proof of my contributions. I saved performance reviews where I was praised for work that later got credited to others. I documented meetings where my ideas were dismissed, then implemented weeks later as someone else's suggestions. The paper trail painted a clear picture. I was being systematically erased while my work was being systematically stolen. Late at night, organizing these files, I felt a strange mix of anger and validation. Anger at how I'd been treated, but validation that I wasn't imagining it. The evidence was overwhelming. Bradley had created his own worst nightmare, a former employee with perfect documentation of everything he'd done wrong. He just didn't know it yet. The alliance started accidentally. I was having drinks with Amanda Chen, a junior associate who'd been at the firm for 2 years. She seemed frustrated, stirring her wine and staring into the glass. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly, looking around to make sure no one could overhear. "Did Bradley ever take credit for your work?" I nearly choked on my drink. "Why do you ask?" "Because he just presented my entire research brief on environmental law as his own analysis. Didn't even change the footnotes." She looked up at me with tired eyes. "The same thing happened to Melissa Rodriguez before she left. She warned me it would happen to me too." I leaned forward, my heart racing. "What if we didn't have to put up with it?" Amanda's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "What if we built something better? Somewhere that actually values what we bring to the table?" For the first time in months, Amanda smiled. "Are you talking about starting your own firm?" I nodded slowly. "Would you be interested in that conversation?" "More than interested," she whispered. "I'm ready." I wasn't alone anymore, and neither was she. That night, Amanda became my first quiet co-conspirator. The resistance had begun. Office hunting in the city was expensive and demoralizing. Everything decent was either too small, too expensive, or located in buildings that screamed struggling startup. Then I found it. The Heritage Building on 5th Street, exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, and original hardwood floors. It had character, history, and most importantly, it was directly across the street from Cross & Associates. The rent was steep, but I could afford it with my savings and a reasonable business loan. The space was perfect, large enough for a small team, with room to grow, and elegant enough to impress clients. But the location was what sealed the deal. Every morning, Bradley would park his BMW in the lot across the street and walk past my future office. Every evening, he'd drive home the same way. He would see my success every single day. I signed the lease under a holding company I'd created specifically for this purpose. The landlord didn't know who was really behind Hayes Properties LLC, and neither would Bradley. I wanted the element of surprise. As I walked through the empty space, imagining how it would look with furniture and staff, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years at Cross & Associates. Excitement about the future. Bradley was about to have a front-row seat to everything he'd told me I could never accomplish. Reaching out to former clients felt like walking a tightrope. I had to be careful not to violate any non-compete agreements or ethical rules. But there was nothing stopping me from having coffee with people I'd worked with professionally. My first call was to Patricia Williams, CEO of Williams Manufacturing. I'd handled her company's merger 2 years ago, but Bradley had taken credit for the successful deal. She'd always been kind to me, often asking specifically for my input during strategy sessions. "Victoria," she said warmly when I called. "How wonderful to hear from you. Are you still at Cross & Associates?" "Actually, I'm starting my own practice. I wanted you to be among the first to know." There was a pause. Then, "When can we meet? I've been looking for a reason to make a change." We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Patricia leaned forward as I explained my vision for Hayes, legal group, personalized service, transparent billing, and partners who actually did the work instead of delegating everything to associates. "This sounds exactly like what I've been wanting," she said. "Bradley's a decent lawyer, but I always felt like I was just another billable hour to him. When can you start handling our legal work?" "Give me 6 weeks to get everything set up properly," she smiled. "Consider it done. And Victoria, I know at least 3 other CEOs who would be very interested in what you're building." It wasn't client stealing, it was client choosing. Nights and weekends became my second full-time job. While Bradley thought I was finally settling into my supporting role, I was building an empire. I designed letterhead, business cards, and a website that showcased actual results instead of empty promises. I interviewed potential associates, brilliant lawyers who'd been overlooked by bigger firms for various reasons. Women who'd been passed over for partnership. Minorities who'd been pigeonholed into certain practice areas. Recent graduates with incredible potential but no connections. I was building the firm I'd always wanted to work for. I researched the best legal software, negotiated contracts with service providers, and designed workflows that would eliminate the inefficiencies I'd watched plague Cross & Associates for years. Every detail was planned meticulously. From the coffee machine in the break room to the client management system, everything was chosen to create the kind of workplace where brilliant people could do their best work. Amanda helped with research, working late into the night at her apartment while pretending to study for continuing education courses. We communicated through encrypted messages and met only in public places where no one from the firm would see us. We were building something beautiful in secret, piece by piece, while Bradley remained completely oblivious. The anticipation was almost unbearable. On a rainy Thursday morning in October, I walked into Bradley's corner office and closed the door behind me. He looked up from his computer with mild irritation, clearly annoyed at being interrupted. "Victoria, what can I do for you? I'm pretty swamped this morning." I sat down across from his mahogany desk, the same desk where he dismissed my ideas countless times, and smiled politely. "I'm resigning, Bradley. My last day will be 2 weeks from today." He blinked, clearly caught off guard. Then that familiar smirk appeared. "Resigning? Did you find another position? Please tell me you're not going to one of our competitors." "I'm starting my own practice." The smirk widened. "Your own practice?" "Victoria, I thought we'd discuss this. Running a firm requires skills you just don't have. Client development, business management, leadership." "I appreciate your concern," I interrupted, "but I'm confident in my decision." He leaned back in his chair, clearly amused. "Where are you planning to set up shop? Your living room?" "I've secured office space downtown. Everything's ready to go." For the first time, his expression shifted slightly. "Well, I wish you luck. It's a tough market out there. Don't take it personally when you have to come back looking for a job in 6 months." I stood up and extended my hand. "Thank you for the opportunity to learn so much here." As we shook hands, I smiled. He had absolutely no idea what was coming. 2 weeks later, I sent a simple email to everyone at Cross & Associates from my new business address. Dear colleagues, I'm excited to announce the launch of Hayes Legal Group, located at 412 5th Street. We specialize in corporate law, with a focus on personalized service and innovative solutions. Thank you for all the support over the years. I look forward to continuing to serve the legal community. Best regards, Victoria Hayes, founder and managing partner, Hayes Legal Group. I hit send at exactly 9 a.m., just as the morning partners meeting was starting. According to Amanda, who was still at Cross & Associates finishing her transition, Bradley's reaction was priceless. His face went red as he read the email, then pale as he realized the address. "She's across the street," he said to the room, his voice barely controlled. She opened her practice directly across the street from us. One of the partners asked if that was legal. Another wondered if she'd stolen any clients. Bradley just stared out the conference room window at my building, where a simple sign now read Hayes Legal Group in elegant gold letters. Amanda texted me later. "He spent the entire meeting pacing and looking out the window. I think you broke his brain." For 7 years I'd been invisible to him. Now I was impossible to ignore. The psychological warfare had begun. My first major victory came faster than I'd expected. Patricia Williams referred me to Jackson Industries, a manufacturing company facing a complex regulatory dispute. The case was worth $200,000 in fees, more than I dared hope for in my first month. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was the phone call I received the day after I won the case. "Victoria, this is Amanda. You need to know what just happened. Bradley got a cease and desist letter today from Jackson Industries. Apparently, they're terminating their relationship with Cross & Associates, and they want all their files transferred to Hayes Legal Group immediately." I nearly dropped my phone. Jackson Industries had been one of Bradley's oldest clients. How did he react? He threw his coffee mug against the wall. Then he locked himself in his office for 2 hours. When he finally came out, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. That afternoon, I watched from my office window as Bradley paced in his conference room, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing wildly. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but his body language told the whole story. He was panicking. For years, he'd told me I wasn't a rainmaker. Now I was making it rain while his clients walked away. The irony was delicious. I turned back to my desk and started preparing for my next case. There was work to do. Every morning became a ritual. I'd arrive at my office early, make coffee, and watch Bradley Cross park his BMW across the street. He'd sit in his car for a few minutes, staring up at my building, before finally getting out and walking to his office. Some mornings, our eyes would meet through the windows. I'd nod politely. He'd look away quickly, like he'd been caught doing something wrong. The psychological effect was exactly what I'd hoped for. I wasn't just succeeding, I was succeeding right in front of him, every single day. There was no escaping the evidence of everything he'd said I couldn't do. Amanda, who was now my litigation director, told me he'd started closing his blinds during the day so he wouldn't have to see our building. But he couldn't avoid it when he arrived in the morning or left at night. He asked the building manager if there were any other parking options, she reported during one of our weekly check-ins. Apparently, he's willing to pay extra to park somewhere else. But the building only had one lot, and his lease required him to use it. He was trapped, forced to confront his own prejudices and mistakes twice a day, 5 days a week. I never gloated, never sent snide messages, never did anything unprofessional. I just succeeded, loudly and visibly, right across the street from his office. The Legal Tribune wanted to do a feature story on new firms making waves in the city. When they called, I almost said no. I'd spent years avoiding the spotlight, letting others take credit for my work. But this was different. This was my firm, my success, my chance to tell my story. The interview took place in my office, with the reporter clearly impressed by the space and the energy of my small but growing team. When she asked why I'd decided to start my own firm, I chose my words carefully. I wanted to create a place where excellent work is recognized and rewarded, where clients get personal attention from experienced attorneys, not just junior associates. where success is measured by results, not just billable hours. What made you choose this location? I smiled. The building has character, and the location is convenient for our clients. The article ran 2 weeks later, with my photo on the cover and a headline that read, "Rising Star, Victoria Hayes builds legal practice on innovation and integrity." Bradley's name wasn't mentioned anywhere in the piece. According to Amanda, he bought 5 copies of the magazine and threw them all in the trash. Then he scheduled an emergency marketing meeting to discuss raising the firm's profile. Too late, Bradley. I was already ahead of you. The exodus started slowly, then accelerated. First, Amanda officially joined Hayes Legal Group as my litigation director. Then Michael Rodriguez, a brilliant tax attorney who'd been overlooked for partnership 3 years running. By spring, I had 5 former Crossan Associates employees on my team. Each one brought expertise, client relationships, and horror stories about how they'd been treated at their old firm. Bradley called an all-hands meeting yesterday, Michael told me during his first week. He spent 20 minutes talking about loyalty and commitment to the firm. Everyone just sat there looking uncomfortable. The real blow came when Sarah Chen, Bradley's former executive assistant, gave her notice. She'd been with the firm for 8 years and knew every client, every case, every deadline. "I'm tired of being taken for granted," she told me when I offered her a position as our office manager. "At Crossan Associates, I was invisible. Here, I feel valued." Sarah brought something invaluable with her: institutional knowledge. She knew which clients were unhappy, which cases were struggling, and which partners were thinking about leaving. "Bradley's in panic mode," she reported. "He's trying to poach associates from other firms, but word is getting around about how he treats people. No one wants to work for him anymore. The best part? He couldn't accuse me of recruiting his staff. They were all coming to me." The harassment complaint came from an unexpected source. Julia Martinez, a former associate who'd left Crossan Associates 6 months before I did. She filed a formal complaint with the state bar, alleging a pattern of gender discrimination and hostile work environment. I learned about it when Amanda called me, barely able to contain her excitement. "Victoria, you're not going to believe this. Julia Martinez filed a complaint against Bradley and the firm. Sexual harassment, discrimination, retaliation, the whole package. And get this, she's asking other former female employees to provide testimony." My heart raced. I'd suspected Julia had her own reasons for leaving, but she'd never said anything specific. "The state bar is opening a formal investigation," Amanda continued. "They're requesting personnel files, performance reviews, everything." Bradley looked like he was going to pass out when the investigators showed up. Within days, other former employees came forward. Stories of inappropriate comments, passed over promotions, and retaliation against anyone who complained. The picture that emerged was damning. I wasn't contacted as part of the investigation. My departure had been recent and voluntary. But I watched from across the street as lawyers and investigators trooped in and out of the Crossan Associates offices. Bradley had always been untouchable. Now he was finally being held accountable. The emergency partners meeting was called for a Friday afternoon. From my office window, I could see cars arriving in the Crossan Associates parking lot, not just local partners, but people I recognized as senior partners from the firm's other offices. Amanda, who still had friends inside the firm, managed to get some details. "They're considering suspending Bradley pending the investigation," she reported. "Apparently, the insurance company is freaking out about liability exposure. Some of the partners are talking about forcing him out entirely." The meeting lasted 4 hours. I watched as Bradley's Mercedes sat alone in the parking lot while other cars came and went. When it finally ended, he emerged looking haggard and defeated. Monday morning, he didn't show up for work. "Official story is that he's taking a leave of absence for personal reasons," Amanda reported. Unofficial story is that the partners gave him an ultimatum: resign quietly or face a public expulsion. From my office window, I watched the lights stay dark in his corner office for 3 days straight. The man who'd told me I'd never succeed was now fighting for his own professional survival. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, but I felt enormous satisfaction in my own success. Bradley's desperation became obvious when he tried to poach my staff. The offer came through a high-end recruitment firm, targeting Amanda specifically. "They're offering me double my current salary to come back," she told me, sliding the offer letter across my desk, plus a guaranteed partnership track and a signing bonus. I read through the proposal, impressed despite myself. It was a generous offer, probably more than the firm could actually afford. "Are you interested?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Amanda laughed. "Are you kidding? After everything we've built here? After how they treated us?" She shook her head. "Besides, I know what Bradley's really like now. Money can't fix a toxic culture." Similar offers went out to Michael and 2 other former Cross & Associates employees on my team. All of them declined. "It's insulting," Michael said when he showed me his recruitment letter. "They think we can be bought back after everything that happened? They clearly don't understand why we left in the first place." The failed recruitment attempt told me everything I needed to know about Bradley's state of mind. He was so desperate to stop the bleeding that he was willing to throw money at people he'd previously undervalued and mistreated. Too little, too late. The client defections accelerated through the summer. Williams Manufacturing was just the beginning. Henderson Corporation, my old client that had been reassigned, terminated their relationship with Cross & Associates and moved their business to Hayes Legal Group. Then came Morrison Industries, followed by 3 smaller but lucrative corporate clients. Each transition brought not just revenue but validation that clients preferred working with attorneys who actually handled their cases personally. "Bradley's been calling clients directly, trying to convince them to stay," Sarah reported during our weekly staff meeting. "It's not going well. Apparently he got pretty heated with the CEO of Henderson Corporation, called him ungrateful, and said we were inexperienced upstarts. The Henderson CEO responded by accelerating their transition timeline and recommending us to 2 other companies. From my office window, I could see the Cross & Associates parking lot getting emptier. Fewer cars, fewer lights in the windows, fewer people coming and going. The firm was shrinking while we were growing. I'd started with just myself and Amanda. Now we had 8 full-time employees and were considering expanding to a 2nd floor. The contrast was impossible to ignore, especially for someone whose office faced hours every day. The audit was triggered by a client complaint about billing irregularities. Once the State Bar investigation started, several former Cross & Associates clients came forward with concerns about overbilling and charges for work that hadn't been performed. "They're going through everything with a fine-tooth comb," Amanda reported. "Billing records, timesheets, expense reports. Bradley's been locked in conference rooms with accountants and lawyers for weeks." The investigation uncovered a pattern of inflated hours, charges for work done by paralegals being billed at attorney rates, and expenses that couldn't be properly documented. The ethical violations were serious enough to trigger disciplinary action. Meanwhile, Hayes Legal Group underwent our own voluntary financial review. I wanted to make sure our billing practices were beyond reproach, especially given the scrutiny our former firm was facing. We passed with flying colors. Transparent billing, detailed documentation, and conservative timekeeping had been priorities from day one. "It's the difference between building a business and running a scam," Michael observed during our review meeting. "We're creating sustainable success. They were just trying to extract as much money as possible." The audit results were sealed, but word leaked that Cross & Associates faced significant financial penalties and mandatory oversight. The top floor of my building came up for lease in September. It was larger than my current space, with better views and room for significant expansion. Perfect for a growing firm that needed to accommodate new hires and additional practice areas. I submitted my bid through Hayes Legal Group, but I wasn't the only interested party. Cross & Associates put in a competing offer, clearly hoping to secure the space to prevent my further expansion. The landlord called me personally to discuss the proposals. "Miss Hayes, I have to tell you, your firm has been an excellent tenant. Always on time with rent, no complaints, professional staff. The other bidder, well, let's just say they've had some recent challenges that concern me." My bid was accepted within 24 hours. The next morning, I watched from my soon-to-be former office as Bradley stood in the parking lot, staring up at the Hayes Legal Group sign that would soon be visible from an even more prominent position. He stood there for 10 minutes, just looking up at the building that was becoming a monument to everything he'd said I couldn't accomplish. Then he got in his car and drove away. Moving day was ceremonial as much as practical. I wanted my expansion to the top floor to be visible, unmistakable, and elegantly professional. The new office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides, polished concrete floors, and enough space for 20 attorneys plus support staff. The view looked out over the entire downtown area, including a perfect sightline to Cross & Associates. I stood in my new corner office, looking down at the firm where I'd spent 7 years being told I wasn't good enough. The building looked smaller from up here, less imposing than it once had. Bradley appeared in his office window across the street. For a moment, our eyes met across the distance. I raised my hand in a small wave, not mocking, just acknowledging his presence. He stepped back from the window and closed his blinds. That afternoon, a reporter from the Business Journal called to ask about our expansion. "How does it feel to be looking down on your former employer?" she asked. "I don't think about them much anymore," I said honestly. "We're focused on serving our clients and building something sustainable. The past is the past." But sometimes, justice is just about perspective. The end came quietly, without drama or fanfare. One morning in November, I arrived at work to see moving trucks outside Cross & Associates. By noon, they were loading furniture and file boxes. "It's official," Amanda reported. "They're merging with Hartwell and Partners. Bradley's not part of the deal. He's been bought out." I watched from my window as workers carried out the mahogany desk from Bradley's office, the same desk where he'd dismissed my ideas and told me I'd never make it on my own. His nameplate was still attached to the front. 2 years later, Hayes Legal Group occupies 3 floors of our building and employs 24 people. We've been recognized as one of the city's fastest-growing law firms and have a waiting list of attorneys who want to join our team. I never email Bradley, never call him, never look back. But sometimes, when I'm working late and the city lights twinkle outside my windows, I think about that conference room where he told me I'd never make it on my own. I think about his smirk, his condescending voice, his absolute certainty that I was nothing more than support material. He was wrong about everything. I didn't just succeed on my own. I succeeded beyond anything he could have imagined. I built the kind of firm he never could, one based on respect, integrity, and recognizing talent wherever it comes from. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's proving them wrong so completely that their opinion becomes irrelevant. I tell this story now because someone needs to hear it. Someone sitting in a conference room being told they're not good enough, not leadership material, not capable of more. Build something better. And when you rise so high they can't reach you, even if they tried.